Chairman, I appreciate it. And something happened that it doesn't happen very often. I want to compliment you and Ms. Capito on the fact that we had witnesses. All were really well informed and well qualified, but they all, each one, stayed within 5 minutes. That never happens, and I just appreciate that very much. Um, Ms. Chard, in your testimony, you note how the EPA should, and I emphasize should, consider the size of water systems when establishing regulations. The reality is that additional regulations only create often unsustainable burdens on our small, rural, and disadvantaged systems as a result of financial limitations in geography. So, Ms. Chard, should national regulations take into account the varying capabilities of the water systems, and are they doing that now?
So thank you, Senator Inhofe. That's a tough one for all of us. We don't want to establish a 2 or 3 tier protection level, the haves and the have-nots. But we do have to recognize that small systems have a different capacity to comply. We have seen with the disinfection byproducts rule, there was stage 1, which applied to the larger systems and then brought in the smaller systems in stage 2. That gave the smaller systems additional time to develop the expertise to obtain funding to try to install technologies. And it's really important that we look at the development of cost-effective and efficient technologies that small systems can, one, afford, but two, have the technical capabilities to operate. We need to make sure that we are providing appropriate workforce training and technical assistance training and sampling assistance training for these smaller, often very rural systems. We talk about the benefits of other programs where we can come in through capacity development and work with those systems on their technical, financial, and managerial capabilities. Those take lesser funds to actually implement. But anytime we see expanding regulatory provisions, we have to recognize that there are going to be struggles for small systems in order to comply. Not only the cost, but on the technical capabilities as well.
So you think there is room for improvement?
Oh, I definitely think there's room for improvement in the regulations. As somebody who's involved in writing them, I know we can do better. There's definitely room for improvement in operations. We can help systems get better trained. We can definitely improve the amount of funding that we dedicate to small systems. In Oklahoma, we're very fortunate that we're able to work with our tribal partners and other non-traditional partners in solving region-wide drinking water and wastewater programs and problems.
On regulations, I agree with you. There are some problems. I remember last March, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, states issued stay-at-home orders and distance guidelines and all the guidelines that we are so familiar with now. Um, and during that time, the last March, due to the coronavirus, the EPA announced it temporarily, and I stress temporarily because that's what they did. They relaxed the certain penalties for noncompliance of routine environmental reporting and monitored requirements. And because of that, Gina McCarthy, who's now the President Biden's domestic climate czar, called the move an open license to pollute. Now, I don't think it did, and maybe we learned some lessons from that action. And I'd like to get your response to: did you observe any increased water pollution in Oklahoma as a result of relaxing some of these regulations?
In Oklahoma, the answer is a resounding no, we did not. The state actually took a similar action prior to the EPA action. And really what it did was not change compliance and not change requirements. It just added a mitigating factor that could be considered if a penalty were assessed. In Oklahoma, we had 4 or 5 requests for mitigation or to consider COVID-19 because of a violation, but the violations were not actually permit limit violations or national drinking water standard violations. It was samples were not analyzed within the holding time or were not collected in time. And that was a result
Mhm.
of people being ill and being unable to uh, collect those samples, or in many cases outside the system's control. It was at a laboratory facility, and so we were
Mhm.
able to work with those systems, and we did not see significant
Yeah,
issues
and
related
I
to
remember
that.
making some phone calls at that time and observing that we did a good by and large, states do a great job of regulation. That's a good point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.